Hey guys, it's Sofia here, and in this video I'm going to explain what opacity masks are in Adobe Illustrator by showing you a couple of quick examples of how they can be applied to your illustrations. An opacity mask is something that you can apply to any object that you create, giving you the ability to define the transparency of the object with more control. This will help you add visibility to your designs in creative and dynamic ways. For this tutorial, I have created a simple vector bird that I want to make a bit more exciting by adding textures and gradients. And I'm going to do this by using opacity masks. You can also use this bird, as I have provided a link in the description below. Alternatively, you can use any illustration you have created in Adobe Illustrator. Before we begin, ensure you have opened the transparency and gradient panels, which can be found under Window. The transparency panel is where the opacity mask lives. To show you how this works, we are going to start by creating a shadow on the bird. Select the bird's peach-coloured body, copy and paste in place, and go to your fill box and choose a slightly darker colour to the pink. With this object selected, you should be able to see a thumbnail image to the left of your transparency panel. To create an opacity mask for this object, double-click inside the empty box to the right. You will notice that your object has disappeared and the box is now black. This is Adobe Illustrator's default and means that your object will have an opacity of 0%. In the opacity mask, the transparency values are represented as different shades of grey. Anything that is black in your opacity mask has an opacity of 0% and is invisible. Anything that is white in your opacity mask has an opacity of 100% and is visible. Any areas that are different shades of grey will vary in transparency depending on their colour value. We are going to apply a grayscale gradient to this opacity mask. To do this, you need to go to the gradient panel. In the drop-down menu, select a grayscale gradient, and then you need to create a vector object in the opacity mask. In this instance, I'm going to create a rectangle that covers the entire bird's body. As you can see, your pink object now fades out as its transparency values are determined by the grayscale gradient we have just added to the opacity mask. If you look at the opacity mask thumbnail in your transparency panel, you can now see that it contains the gradient we have just added. Let's try another way of using opacity masks. To go back to editing your illustration, you need to exit the opacity mask by clicking once on the left thumbnail of the object. Then, with this object selected, I'm going to go to my layers panel and just move it behind a few different objects so the eyes and the features on the bird can stand out. The next opacity mask I want to add is to these squiggly lines on the bird's tail. I want these lines to be contained to the bird's tail and not hanging out the ends like it is now. So first things first, I'm going to select all the lines and ensure that they are grouped as one object by right-clicking and selecting Group. In the transparency panel, you can now see the lines represented as one object in the thumbnail. Go back to your illustration and select the bird's body. Copy and paste in place, and then in the fill box, choose white. Copy the white object and then delete it from your artboard. Select the squiggly lines again and create an opacity mask by double-clicking on the right box in the transparency panel. Again, everything is defaulted to black and nothing is visible. Paste in place the white object you saved previously, and now the lines are contained within the tail. Let's go turn the camera on and If you enjoyed this tutorial, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you love all things illustrations, don't forget to
subscribe to the link right here.